Once upon a time there was a kingdom called Bellflower that was ruled by a kind and generous king. The kingdom was lush and green with rolling hills, crystal-clear rivers, and meadows dotted with wild flowers. The villagers of Bellflower were happy and prosperous, living simple lives as farmers, weavers, and bakers. On the edge of Bellflower there was a dark, gloomy forest known as the Tanglewood. The Tanglewood was dense and overgrown, the canopy of leaves blocking out the sun so that it always seemed dark and shadowy. Strange sounds could be heard emanating from the Tanglewood, and few dared venture inside, for it was rumored to be filled with dangerous creatures. Deep in the darkest part of the Tanglewood there was an isolated cave. Lying on a pile of gold and gems in the dank cave was a young emerald-green dragon. This dragon was not like other dragons. He did not have a taste for terrorizing villages or hoarding treasure. He only lived in the cave because he was afraid the villagers would be frightened of him if they saw him. In fact, the dragon dreamed of having human friends. He imagined sharing meals by a cozy fireplace in a cottage, going on long walks in the countryside, reading books together at night before bed. The dragon was very lonely. One sunny morning, a young boy named Binks decided to take his pony Bluebell out for a ride. Binks often explored the meadows around the village, but today he decided to venture closer to the edge of the Tanglewood. As Binks and Bluebell got closer to the dark forest, Bluebell got spooked. She reared up and galloped straight into the Tanglewood before Binks could stop her. Binks ran after Bluebell, calling her name desperately. He followed her tracks deeper and deeper into the forest. The canopy of trees blocked out all sunlight, and Binks started to feel afraid. Strange noises echoed around him, and vines and branches clawed at his clothes. But he had to find Bluebell. Finally, Binks heard Bluebell whinny in the distance. He ran toward the sound and found himself in front of the mouth of a cave covered in twisted vines. Binks hesitated, then gathered his courage and went into the cave, calling Bluebell. Inside the cave, Binks found Bluebell cowering in a corner, her reins tangled around stalagmites. Relieved, he rushed over to calm and untangle her. As he worked, Binks heard a loud yawn behind him. He whirled around and found himself staring into the giant green eyes of a dragon. Binks wanted to run, but his legs felt frozen. The dragon's enormous emerald green head loomed over him, smoke swirling from its nostrils. Then, to Binks's surprise, the dragon gave a friendly smile. "Hello," it rumbled. "Who are you?" Too shocked to speak, Binks just stared. The dragon tilted his head. "I'm sorry if I scared you," he said, in a rumbling but kind voice. "My name is Cedar. I've never met a human before. What's your name?" Binks finally found his voice. I am Binks," he stammered. Cedar beamed, his green eyes lighting up. "It's nice to meet you, Binks," he said. "Would you like to be friends?" Binks was confused but no longer afraid. He had never heard of a friendly dragon before. All the fairy tales warned of dangerous, fire-breathing monsters. But Cedar seemed different. Looking into Cedar's big green eyes, Binks saw loneliness and hopefulness, not anger. "Yes, I'll be your friend," said Binks bravely. Cedar clapped his large, scaly hands together gleefully, making the gold coins in the cave jingle. From that day on, Binks visited Cedar every day in his cave. At first the dragon was overjoyed to simply have someone to talk to. But after a while, Cedar longed to see more of the world and meet other humans. He wanted to stroll through the village and make more friends. Binks promised to help Cedar. The next morning, Binks brought painting supplies from his cottage. He painted Cedar's claws a cheerful sunny yellow and used pink chalk to color his ridges pink. Cedar looked at his decorated scales and clapped in delight. "Now I look less scary," he said. After scrubbing the soot off Cedar's scales and teeth, Binks wove a giant harness and reins out of vines and ropes. Cedar allowed Binks to attach the harness to him like a pony. As the dragon walked, Binks sat on his shoulders holding the reins tightly. That afternoon, Cedar stepped out of his dark cave for the first time, blinking in the bright sunshine. Perched on Cedar's back, Binks guided the dragon through the tanglewood toward the village. Birds chirped and squirrels chattered as if welcoming Cedar. At first, when villagers saw Cedar approaching, they screamed and ran into their homes, locking their doors. But Binks shouted, "Don't be afraid. He's a friendly dragon." Cedar wore a giant toothy smile and waved his pink-clawed hands. Soon curious children peeked out of windows and doors. A few brave kids approached Cedar, patting his soft snout and admiring his bright scales. The parents whispered in amazement as they watched their children giggle and play with a real dragon. The king himself came out to meet Cedar. The wise king saw immediately that this was no ordinary monster. He welcomed Cedar to the village and invited him to stay in the castle gardens. Cedar thanked the king, his green eyes brimming with grateful tears. Cedar became a gentle giant in Bellflower Kingdom. With Binks still by his side, he gave rides to children and helped the villagers by lifting heavy bags or plowing fields. At night, Cedar performed fire breath shows, making sparks dance and swirl in the sky. The village celebrated with a feast of friendship in Cedar's honor. Binks and Cedar spent many happy years together in Bellflower. They went on long flights over the kingdom, had picnics in the meadows, and watched the fireflies glitter in the dusk. And they both finally felt that they had found where they belonged.